My name is Jahan Casey. I'm the director of the First Nations Public Service Secretariat, and I'm calling from the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, where I am privileged to live at the moment. I'm from Skidegate, Finhappen Haida Gwaii. I'm Haida on my father's side and mostly Irish on my mother's side. And I have been also privileged to lead the FNPSS team for a number of years. And I'm very excited about the work that we're doing here, which is under our mentorship initiative, which brings together First Nations band administrators, leadership, comprehensive community planners, or other positions to connect in sessions like this, in small groups, one-on-one, to share challenges, best practices, knowledge on what they're doing in their communities and administrations. These fireside chats we started because we wanted to be able to share some of the experiences and personal stories from the people that have been doing this work for a long time, and many of them are my personal heroes, who really have been devoting their lives to work for their communities and for Aboriginal people. First Nations primarily here in British Columbia. So I won't speak too much more. We will start with introductions again, because we're normally a small group, and although we're virtual, we like to pretend we're sitting around a crackling fire. I'll ask each of you just if you don't mind to introduce yourself, or if you aren't somewhere where you can go on camera, audio is fine. I noticed, of course, Sue in the chat has said that she's not feeling well. I hope you're feeling better soon. And then I'll leave Ernest to the end so he can give a more lengthy introduction to himself. So maybe I could start with Darnell.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Darnell Hunt. I'm the Employment and Training Manager for Nakazi 10 in Fort St. James.
Thanks. Thanks for coming, Darnell. Valerie.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So yeah, I'm Valerie Peters. I'm from Lillooet, BC. I am the project coordinator here at the ISET office. I've been in this position for about 2 months now. Yes.
Welcome. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Rachel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel, and also known as Stl'atl'imx amongst my family. I'm coming from Stl'atl'imx First Nation. My roots stem from Stl'at, and well, I've got a bit of Hupachisit, a bit of Stl'atl'imx in there, and DT dot. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for these opportunities that you provide through the work that you do, and thank you to our guest speaker today.
Thanks, Rachel. Very, very happy to have you here. And Dora, since you just turned on camera.
Hi, my name is Dora Demers. I'm the administrator here at Hachlap in Lillooet. I've just been here a little over a month now. I worked here previous from 2012 to 2015, been doing administration going on to probably close to 23 years now. So yeah, thank you for putting these on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora. 23 years. Wow, that's fantastic. I think I'm looking, we heard from Valerie, I believe. Sue.
Hi, thanks everyone for understanding. Yeah, I'm just kind of wanted to attend today, so I'm just gonna not turn the camera on while I'm working from home and just checking in. But yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to Secretariat for this. My name is Sue Castell. I just started a role as a Chief Planning Officer with Stl'atl'imx First Nation. Prior to that, I was the Employment Strategist with the Nation for almost 2 years. And yeah, really much looking forward to listening to today's presenter, and thank you very much.
Thank you, and I do hope you're feeling better. And Rachel, I'm very glad you're eating. I often try to sneak it in between a meeting or on a meeting. I hope everyone is taking time to eat today. Before I turn it over to Ernest, I'll let him introduce himself because he'll do a much better job than I will. But I know from my work with him, he was a band administrator. He's currently a program manager. He's also on our band administrators advisory committee, which provides basically sets the stage, the tone, the direction for everything FMPSS does. So we thank him for that. If anyone is interested in knowing more about our Band Administrators Advisory Committee or think you might want to participate, please let me know. We'll follow up. I know he's also passionate about nation building and self-determination and First Nations moving forward on their own plans and the way that we used to so many years ago before that was stopped so abruptly and harshly. So I'm super excited. We have 90 minutes, but we of course want time for questions, Ernest, because I'm sure there'll be a ton. So with that, I'll turn it over to you and thank you.
Great, thanks, Jahan. Nice to see everybody or to meet you folks. Yeah, I'm Ernest Armann. I'm from Naquaqua, the Stl'atl'imx. I've been doing band administration or band development, organization development, all in support of nation building, basically through my whole career. And you know, it's kind of funny that I'm a program manager now because I've always been the boss, and now I'm a program manager. So it's different to think this way. But I think it's a good thing because it's really helping a lot of areas that need attention in our public services. And, you know, and so I've been around quite a long time. I started back in, oh man, I had to write it down. Back in 1991, that was a big year for me. I got married, I got a new job, and I got a house on the reserve. And for the most part, I did pretty well. You know, and it was interesting. Working for a small community was really interesting. You know, and I was thinking back, you know, just to, you know, some of these lifelong lessons that I've learned along the way. And I really learned that, you know, I'm really driven now. And I'm driven because I know my story is always used to start off with I'm a recovering band manager. And I used to say that on purpose because literally the stress load that I used to carry just about killed me, to be honest with you, on the job. And that's one of my biggest life lessons, you know, and the challenge has always been working on the Indian Act system. You're basically administering poverty. You have to learn to say no to everybody. You can't do what people would like, what they want. Sometimes it's a big challenging to meet basic needs, you know, and when I was working in my band, you know, I started off, I was a young kid, basically. I was like 23, and I got hired on as the band manager. And when I got hired on, there was no orientation. There was no expectations or any briefing on what kind of activities were going on, what should I be doing, you know, and it was fun for the first couple of days. And then the reality of the businesses started to kick in, and a lot of it was challenging. You know, and it was interesting because we're a small community and we're average. You know, I think the average size of a First Nation now in BC is somewhere around 300. So that's interesting. You know, when there's 200 bands in BC, the average size is 200. So that's interesting. So that doesn't tell us very much around, you know, there's about 60,000 First Nation people then to use that basic calculations. You know, and it was really tough, you know, being in that role. And basically you have to alienate yourself. You know, I became alienated very quickly. A lot of people I thought were my friends, you know, when I started to clean up and you know, I quit drinking, doing all that fun and all that stuff that you do when you're young. I soon realized that I lost a lot of my friends, you know, because I wasn't doing the same things that they were. But I was always about trying to make change, you know, and I say 91 was a big year because then I had, you know, a young son. all these responsibilities, and I knew everything. And that knew everything attitude got me a lot of places, but it also caused a lot of damage and caused a lot of challenges. And that's one thing I really learned over the time, is to learn about, make sure you have that balance, life-work balance. You gotta have that to maintain your sense of who you are, where you're going, what you're doing, and that confidence. And I think, looking at this stuff, 15 years working in my community as a band manager, I understand what that means now when you're working for your own communities. And it's challenging, to say the least, and when you don't have structure, systems, resources, finances, people, time, it makes that work much harder. And when I look back at those days, things are a lot different now. Basically I had no education other than high school education. And that was interesting, because I basically did a lot of my learning on the job. And a lot of time it was really around learning things the hard way, doing things the hard way. And that's always been something that we need to learn to manage up front, and as we start in our careers. It's different these days. You need to have an education, you need to have a background to take on this leadership role. And being a band administrator involved in that kind of stuff, you are a leader. You are relied upon to provide leadership, and you're developing people. You're taking on a lot of responsibilities. Understanding what those responsibilities are is important. Knowing how the system works is really important. And really, more importantly, how the system doesn't work. And that's the one thing that was really what I learned, is how to work around that. And we know this stuff, we've heard about it, where we've had to make things work. Basically we had to fudge reports, we had to fudge applications to get resources to get things done. And that's unfortunate, because that's what the system's forced us to do. And because not everybody's got a system that they step into and you just run it. It's all about building it. And so, during that time as a band manager, I did a lot of cool things. I had to do lots of jobs and lots of work. For a time there, I used to run the waterworks. I built houses. I did a lot of projects, capital projects. I was the capital planner. I was the deliverer. I was the doer. And when you work in a small community and you have a small operation, that's the reality. Most of your staff are doing 2, 3, or 4 different types of jobs and areas of responsibility. And then working with our chief and council, under that system elected under the Indian Act. And it was interesting to see that, because during my time is when I first started up, it's when the treaty process got introduced. And, it was interesting times. Everybody was moving into it. I know our community got involved. And it turned out to be kind of a disappointment, because we weren't ready for doing that work. We had to rely on other people's expertise and processes. And a lot of times we were kind of left out of that discussion. And so I learned a lot from that, and I really started to really educate myself around what this Indian Act system is and what can we do to get out of it. And I quickly learned early on in my career, we needed to get out of that system, because it wasn't serving us. And I didn't fully really appreciate and understand what that has done to us as a people, and what it has done to us to keep us down. And that's always been my challenges. I've always had a problem with authority, and it was interesting to be in this role to have to deal with that. And I was always fighting the system. So I found that was an interesting piece. As I moved on, as I gained experience and doing different things, and we were working with different communities in our area, we had a little tribal council. And it was good, because at that time, tribal councils were quite active in helping build capacity, different things, raising awareness about a bunch of different matters. I remember quite vividly, we spent a lot of time learning and discussing socioeconomics, and to understand that, and to understand where we were at as a people and what we were able to do. And that was interesting to do that learning. And that's when I started really to understand the negative impacts that we receive. You know, we talk about colonialism, we talk about systemic racism. You know, those things were nasty back. It was even worse back in those days. But now there's no excuse for that kind of stuff because there's so much awareness created now around this issue and matter. You know, and there's no more excuse for being ignorant around this matter. Systemic racism is one of our biggest challenges, and something that, you know, when I look at Indian Act, that's actually the biggest systemic. You know, talk about systemic racism. It was created and it was designed to do that. It was designed to destroy us. There's no favors for us under the Indian Act, you know, and what little benefits we get from it. And actually, it's not even the right word, benefits. You know, it's what we do get from it. It doesn't warrant us staying under that system. I look at my career, it's always been about moving on from early on in those days. It was always about, we need to get out of the Indian Act. And so I dedicate a lot of my time to learning about this stuff. I was lucky. I didn't have a background when I started this role. And I was lucky I was able to get into University of Victoria, and I went into the Administering Aboriginal Governance program. And that's where, you know, I got to meet some of our good leaders out there, and some are still around doing good work. People like Ed John, Satsan, those people were running that program. And it was designed to build capacity and raise awareness around who we are, what we are, where we're at, how we got here, to understand our legal context around title, around the Indian question, and all those types of things, and understand the legal ramifications. And we spent a lot of time reviewing and learning about all the cases that have come up through the years to help promote and move our Indian rights forward, raise that awareness, do that fight. And I soon got to connect very well with Satsan, and that's when Stl'atl'imx was in action. We were waiting for the Supreme Court decision to come down. And I was actually interested because I remember the day the decision was made, I was actually in UVic attending classes. I think it was December, and that's when the news came down. It was very interesting because there was so much excitement in that class. We were going, yay, things are going to change. And that's going back to like 95, 96. And here we are, same stuff. We're still under the Indian Act. You know, the treaty process has delivered a little bit of stuff, but it's kind of failed, you know, and there's nothing, you know, like there needs to be a change, you know, and I really learned about inherent rights. Title of the rights and responsibilities is something that we need to be aware of if you're a band manager, because you need to understand it. How does it work? And how do you start to work together in your community to support that? I look at band administrations as their areas of responsibility is primarily around supporting informed decision making at all levels. It could be at program level, it could be dealing with political matters or development, economics, everything like that. It's all related to we need to be tied into the visioning of nation building, vision of becoming self-determining, and to really understand that. You know, and as I went through the years and doing different things, you know, I moved on from being a band manager. I moved to our tribal council as an advisor. I started to get to know other communities and help them develop basic things and help set up some of their administrations and talked about and taught a lot about good governance principles. Because I learned early on that those things are really critical for us to be organized, to be able to move forward. And we needed to be able to do that. We need to be able to have these communications and learn together. And we did learn together. So I really learned a lot of value in that building capacity, but working together in unity. And as I learned more about inherent rights and about our responsibilities and how that ties to me and as being a Stl'atl'imx, what does that mean? And learning about our Clackman and our Huckman, that's what we call it. You know, I don't really know the language, but I definitely know the value what the language does. It does teach us about who we are, where we come from, what our responsibilities are. Our lifelong learning goes there. Our family structure, our way of being and our culture is all tied into that, and it's tied to the land. And we need to understand that. If we don't understand the basic principles of what needs to be a nation, then we're going to be not doing the full work. And to be a nation is quite simple. You need to have a distinct language, you need to have a land base, and oh no, I forgot the third one. How could I do that? And you have to be distinct peoples. And that's a key thing because it ties into the inherent rights as well and moving forward. And that's where I come from. I'm a sovereigntist. I've always been that way. That's the way I was raised. That's the way I was immersed. A lot of my mentors within our tribe, that's what they were doing. And I thought that was really awesome to be doing that stuff and to see the things that we're doing at home took away from that because it was always the hardest part of the job, trying to meet people's needs. And you can't do that under that system or the way you want to do it. You know, as my career went on, I got involved in the health work. You know, I'm a past member of the First Nations Health Council. I really learned a lot there doing that work on health governance transformation. And it was amazing to see when you bring together a bunch of good minds to think about how we create a sustainable solution to meet our own needs, to have our own programming and policy developed and delivered by our own people. When I first started out, 30 years ago, basically, I never thought I'd see that day where we'd be doing this kind of work and where these types of things would come into play. And when we look into our communities now, and as we're doing this work, and it's a lot of interesting things I've noticed. And I've from a high level point of view, that's how I like to sort of make my comments and things like that. So I don't want to offend people. I've worked really hard to try not to do that. But sometimes I might say things that may come out wrong or be interpreted differently. And so that's always important for us to understand that. And one of the things I've really learned early on is to really look at, benefit of the doubt. Always expect the best out of people to move when you're looking at doing these things. When I look at organizations and what we do, we need people to do that. One of the things I was doing when I was in my younger days, I thought if you want to do a job right, you had to do it yourself. So I ended up doing a lot of work by myself, and that wasn't good. It took a long time for me to figure that out. I got a flat forehead just because. But now that I'm a bit wiser, I've really learned to appreciate developing teams and organizations. When I was younger, I didn't have much appreciation for policy, as an example. I've learned over time to embrace policy now because I know what it can do. I know how it can transform. I know how it can communicate and establish standards for what we do and how we do things. And it's definitely an area of work that we need to pay more attention to in developing our own policies and we do our own things. And so when I really think about the work and the opportunities that I've had, those opportunities aren't like that anymore. I was, when I got out of school, I didn't have the grades to get into a university like UVic. Being an adult learner and a First Nations person, that got me in the door. But the one thing I find interesting, I never bothered pursuing a master's degree or anything like that. I didn't have the time. And to be honest with you, education and schooling is really tough for me to do. I'd rather be out doing work and doing things. And at that time, we didn't have that luxury. And we still don't have that luxury to make the time for capacity building for professional development. It's very critical, as I move through the work, I've gone from, being the band manager of my community to being an advisor in governance and organization development. And I moved into developing our Stl'atl'imx Government Services organization to implement a hydro settlement agreement that we had as a nation. And that was a lot of fun. We basically built the whole organization from scratch. And we developed our own governance, we developed our own policies, we had our own structures. We had a very clear mandate on the agreement. And the challenge, of course, was connecting with community. to bring all these different groups together, even though we're the same people. It was very interesting to see that work. But I learned a lot from that. We had to do a lot of communications, a lot of engagement, a lot of awareness creation, a lot of information had to be transferred. We had to figure out how to build systems to do that. We didn't have them. We didn't have that experience. We didn't have our own internal advisors to help us with that work. So I quickly learned the value of developing partnerships. That's something that I've really embraced my whole career is if you don't have the skill sets and the capacity within your organization, you better have a good policy and process on how to attract good partners and to implement them and utilize them. We didn't have institutions, advisory services like First Nations Public Service Secretariat to give us some of that professional development, advertisement, or an assistance and supports and different ways of networking. Those things didn't really exist back in those days if you weren't in a political environment. But it was a lot of fun, you know, and working at the Health Council and doing that work, you know, talk about social determinants of health and all these types of things. We quickly realized that the work we're actually helping promote is wellness, well-being, nation building. These are the things that are important to help us take back our responsibilities. And that's it. Keep it that simple, you know, and that's one of the things I really learned too, is to keep things simple. To do your thinking, keep it basic. It'll help you get focused, keep you focused, and to really help with that understanding, awareness, and really about knowing who you are. You know, over the years, I was lucky. I was able to take a lot of different leadership development type courses. And the one thing I noticed that was consistent between all of them was there was always components and segments to target to help you understand more about who you are. What are your strengths? What do you bring? Self-awareness is so important. Being grounded is important. Because when you're dealing in this type of a role, you come across all the good things and all the not so good things that happen in our communities. And that's the challenge for us. To take our responsibility back, we need to be honest. We need to understand where we are at and what is really going on. We need to improve our conditions. We need to break some of these nasty cycles we see out there. And I like to just, you know, I look at that from a social determinants point of view. What is social determinants? It's the things that all lead to your wellness. Health is an outcome of being well. Education leads to wellness. Self-determination leads to wellness. Food security, all those things that we need to have within a nation. You know, and when we're asked, I know I was part of a lot of different engagement processes out there, and we were doing development around inherent rights, understanding that work. You know, it was interesting to see how many people really understood what the basis of what it takes to take care of yourself. And that's what determines your nation. If you don't have the ability to take care of your basic needs and your wellnesses and your wellness requirements and your development, how can you become self-determining? How do you take care of your own? We need to start looking at that. You know, you just look at the way things have happened over the last few years and talk about our environment, the climate change and what that's been doing. It's going to be an interesting year to see what that does. You know, and that creates a whole bunch of other work, emergency response, you know, and planning work. You know, and right now there's a big opportunity, you know, people are probably aware of it or you may not be, but there is a big opportunity coming now because of this health work, health governance transformation. And the push to develop and promote and support nation building, creating that awareness and understanding. And it starts with planning, you know, and if we don't understand what our needs are, if we don't have that opportunity to engage and to educate and inform and to learn during this planning processes, we're missing out on a big opportunity. You know, it's good to hear that we had a different variety of folks here. We have employment and training, which is kind of neat. You know, employment and training has always been a key area in my mind. It's always something I've always been doing. I started off employment and training working on, oh man, going back to that history, You know, I forget how they used to go, but I remember when they actually transitioned to the one window model, then they transformed other things, but the process has always been the same. Employment and development is something that's a big deal, and it's something that's sorely needed now. And it's kind of what brought me to coming back to this, being a program manager for employment and training under ISET, sorry. Because that's interesting to see this transitional change finally for this program area. I've been involved in employment and training for like 25 years. And we've finally gotten to the point where we actually have the ability to develop the programming for ourselves. We have nation-to-nation agreements now. And that's stuff we were fighting for years, to be able to have that responsibility to take on our own challenges. It's a good challenge to have. And we're here, we're doing that now. And now that I'm in this kind of role, it's really interesting to see where the things that need to be, we need to build our capacity, we need to have our systems. Information management, it's a big area of work and investment that's required. You know, and so that's the other thing too, which we talk about investment, you know, and we need to be able to do our planning to help inform investors. And that includes ourselves. And I think that's important. Investment is going to be tied to planning, and that's kind of that's the trend that's moving forward now. And I'm starting to see this on the ground. That's good to see. I know working you know, I can't say the health council did all that stuff, but we were a part of that process to help inform, educate, and make change. And that's one of the areas we talked about. And to change that, you know, and you know, if you haven't heard of the Data Governance Initiative, you know, it's something that's coming. It's a great opportunity that's I believe it's going to help support all of our nations in BC. And when I say nations, I'm talking about tribal bases, or I'm talking about language groups, because that's how we need to be recognized. We need to recognize ourselves. You know, and you hear of the things these days, we hear a lot of things about reconciliation. And we need to understand what reconciliation really means. We need to define it for ourselves. Some of my truths that I've come to the conclusion that right now, which drives a lot of the work I do, is reconciliation is kind of two things. From a legal point of view or a recognition point of view, reconciliation is reconciling our laws with everybody else's laws. And what does that mean? Because when you follow the Constitution law under Section 35, it identifies that we do have our rights and they are protected and all these kind of things. You know, we used to hear a lot of talk about the empty box, you know, in the Constitution about Aboriginal rights. That's changed. We've defined that now. Those inherent rights do exist. They are alive. They are recognized. We talked about court cases and things like that. Things have changed a lot. Remember back in my day, we had to prove title. Now we don't. We haven't really taken advantage of that in my community, in my tribe, even as well. And so these types of things are important for us to be aware of as administrators, because we're the link from council to the administration. We're the link from administration to community and vice versa. And so we have an important role as to help inform decision making at all levels. And so we need to be able to set up our systems like that. We need to make sure we have our teams ready to do that work. Things are changing. We don't have enough workers to fill our vacancies. I know that's a trend right across this province. And we start talking about skilled workforces. It's a definite challenge area. We need to develop those, not only for our administrations and service areas, but it's for every aspects of life, right? And so there's a lot of these opportunities that are finally coming to realization. I think we've been doing a lot of great work to get us to the state we are now. And we're learning from that and we're building from that. I think we're starting to learn to be able to look forward and understand, you know, the things that we're dealing with, that we're confronted with on a daily basis. The legacies of residential school, the legacy of the Indian Act that we don't control. These things weren't of our making, and we're stuck trying to deal with this stuff. But nobody else is going to do it. We need to be able to prepare ourselves to take that challenge on for ourselves. So anyways, that's another key piece. And we start talking about planning, and I think Sue identified herself. She's a chief planner, and she moved on from their area. And the one thing that I thought was really good, because when you get into this leadership role, you need to have you can't be a specialist in one area to be a manager, band manager. You need to be a generalist. You know a little bit about everything. And that's kind of where I found myself to be. Like I said earlier on in my career, I thought I knew everything. And now it's the point where I realized, actually, I know a little bit about everything. And that's pretty strong. We only can control what we control, what we influence. And we need to be able to control ourselves at first. We need to know who we are. Because that's who we control. We need to understand that, because that'll serve us well as we go through dealing with conflict or dealing with challenges and all those types of things. And that's, to me, I thought that was really the most important piece when I started to really figure that out for myself, because then I learned to not carry all that stress and all that hurt, but it's hard not to when you're dealing with it, and I think, we need our own support systems as band management. We need to be able to find that. We need to be able to have that trust circle to deal with those types of things. If you don't have it, you need to find it. You need to develop it. You need to create a trusting workplace, a safe workplace, because it makes a huge difference when we start talking about innovation. I love innovation. I love doing things outside of the box. I like new approaches, and through my career, I've really enjoyed working with young people who are eager and willing and wanting to do things, who aren't hindered by, we can't do things or whatever. I like that. We need to be able to support that. We need to touch that spirit. We need to create that environment. We need to make it safe to do that. We need to make it acceptable. And that's important, because it's one of the things that hurts us the most is our own oppression. And I say that, not targeting anybody or anything like that. It's really about, this is just the way it is. And it's part of this Indian Act legacy. So I've always been convinced that, we have to get out of it. And the work that we've been doing, that I've been doing, I think I'm involved with, I see happening now on the ground more so, is how to take that responsibility back. Because that's really what it's about. Let me see. How am I doing for time? I didn't keep track. Am I doing okay? Doing good.
You're doing okay. It is, we still have plenty of time for questions, another 45 minutes or so. So if you have more to share, please go ahead. Yeah,
I did write some notes, just on some of the things that, some of my truths I'm going to say. I really had to learn about soft skills, people skills, working with people. It took me a long time to figure it out, but we need to invest in that up front. You could be, when you're in a manager role, you could have low skill sets, doing your, working through computers, all that kind of stuff. You can do that, but if you got great people skills, you can be very successful as a band manager. I think the key thing is to empower and delegate to your team to do the work, because you need to be the figurehead. You need to be the one that does the strategic thinking. I've got a rule of thumb that I try to follow, and I say try, but that's the wrong word to do, wrong word to say, I've been told. The reality is on the ground sometimes you don't have those times, but you should spend at least 10% of your time just doing planning and being strategic. 10% of your time should be spent on self-care, and that'll make the rest of your work a little easier. People skills is important. And the other day I was in a class. I actually took a class in project management just to give a little refresher, and I learned a lot of new things in there. And we were having a discussion on the difference between being nice and being kind. And I thought it was interesting. I never even would have thought of it, and there's a big difference. Being nice is when you tell people what they want to hear, right? And that's the kind of band manager that a lot of our community people want to have. They want to be told and say, yeah, we can do everything for you. Create that dependency, maintain it. But that's not appropriate. And then we talked about what being kind is. Being kind is telling people what they need to hear. And that's a big difference. And I think we need to understand it. We need to embrace that way of thinking because that's the way it has to be. We don't have the time anymore to be nice because you can't be nice. When you start being nice, you're not doing your role, you're not doing your job, you're not providing that leadership. We need to be kind, but let's do it in a kind way. Find your strengths, right? You need to know who you are, where you come from, what drives you. You know, why are you doing this job? A lot of times you're in band management, you're not there. It's not because of the paycheck. I remember when I first started as a band manager, my gosh, I think I was making $10 an hour. That's, 30 years ago, $10 an hour, that was crazy. But that drive, why do you do it? And, build them, and I think when you look at teams, building your teams, you don't want people on your team who do the same things you do. You want to find the people that complement and support the weaknesses that you may have. So self-evaluation is critical. And I think it's important for us to be able to do that. The other thing I really learned about this job is you need to move away from ego. Forget about who you think you are. It's about be humble, approach it from that point of view. Hear a lot of talk these days about trauma informed and all these types of things. It's actually there to help you understand, but also be aware, but also help take care of yourself. And so you can't do that if you're going from an ego point of view. You need to be humble. And that's something I really learned to appreciate a lot over the years and doing that engagement work, knowing where people are at, understanding that. It's not too, there a lot of our people, we're all family. And so this is it. We need to understand that importance of family. We talk about these things, well, let's practice them. We have to lead that. We have to demonstrate that. I talk about other things, inform your customers, people that use your services. Let them know why or why not things are going. If they get turned down for something, don't just say you got turned down or no, you don't get anything. Just let them know why. It makes a huge difference because people just want to know and understand and make sure that they're being heard. It's a basic principle of being. We appreciate that, so we should pass that same courtesy back. Reciprocal accountability is so important. The thing I also like to say is always be responsive and be prepared. Be responsive is important, and always look to do better. Recognition is an area that we need to improve upon. Recognize our strengths, but also recognize the developments of our teams, our organizations. What have we done? What are we doing? We need to strive for that equal recognition and standards. We have to take care of that because we're the ones taking care of our teams. We look to, when I look at skill sets, problem solving is your number one skill set. The ability to be grounded, to maintain that thinking. Critical thinking it's a skill set that you can develop, but you need to understand it because problem solving is your key. We're here to solve issues and matters, and we need to be responsive and deal with them right away. So that's always something that I thought was always important to pass on. Other skill set areas, definitely you need to become a project manager. You need to know how that works, how that system works. It'll help you deal with anything that comes down the pipe. And you can use that system to run your operations. We look at, we talk about emergency management and those types of things. I've had to do plenty of that. And we had to develop plans. We developed our teams and responses and all those kind of things. You can learn a lot from that field of training. Emergency response planning is actually one of the better project management systems out there. That's exactly what it is. And it's very responsive. It's kind of interesting when you start to learn about and understand some of these underlying principles of these areas of management systems, and they're critical. Project management's good, so planning proficiency, big time. You need to make sure that your organization has a good high standard and it's very clear and people understand how to do the planning work. Is that what should drive you? Because you're implementing and creating the path forward to realize your vision. Developing that planning work and understand visioning and how you respond to that cycle is important. You need to have those things in place to help drive your organization and the work that you do. And again, it's quite basic. So strategic planning, implementation planning, annual work planning, they're all different, right? It's all different types of planning. We always talk about planning, we loop them all together, and we try to make one plan that covers them all. That's not the case. They all have different purposes and different intents and different structures. So you need to understand what that works for you. Because planning work, really, it's about identifying needs, and you identify and say how you're going to address them. And that's so important. Evaluation, reporting out, you need to do it. And one thing I've also learned in my process is learn to celebrate when you have those achievements, because people remember that. It'll improve our morale and understand that we're actually doing something. And then networking is so important. Man, I learned so much through networking and working with different people and different ideas. You look at public service secretariat, it's really about networking. It's about that promotion. It's about sharing what we've learned together and that kind of stuff. We didn't really have much of that when I was younger. We didn't have that. We didn't have the communications that we have nowadays. I still remember the days of when the internet came out in our community. It was dial-up. That was fun. My God. I still remember the days of faxes and I forget microfiber rolls or whatever they call those things. Those were fun. And I remember those days. A lot different now. Email is awesome. I've learned, basically my whole life is run by email right now. All my work is tied into it. If you review all my emails and you follow that stuff, you can see what all the projects I do. You can see what my work plan is, basically from my emails. It's become one of my biggest tools to help me keep organized and do my things. And one of the things I really learned to appreciate is a good executive assistant. You can do so much more work when you have a fully trained, oriented executive assistant. Every band manager should have one, at least one, if not two or three. My last big job, I was working in Lillooet. I had 3 executive assistants, and they were all busy. And that's good because we knew what we were doing, we knew where we were going, and they all had special strengths, and so I used that. Taking a strength-based approach is a nice luxury to have. If you can create that culture in your organization to do that, to utilize and tap into the strengths of your staff to move forward, that is the ideal situation, because you can do a lot more. I talk about standards a lot. We need to have standards for performance, to measure against, to establish our baselines. We always need to constantly look to improve. So learning to do evaluation, report writing is an important piece to make sure that we're able to have our systems that we create support that. Informed decision making is critical for everything that we do, from programs to our governance. Another area that I think is a key important area for us to understand and embrace is policy development. Policy development is a tough business, but policy is fun. And when you start to understand what it does for organizations and how it moves things forward, when you got your systems in place, it's very easy for you to be responsive to adjust to new inputs and strategic directions, and to have that, how we have to manage upwards as well. And the key word is manage. It's not control or whatever. It's to be able to work with that. When you're in a band manager role, your key areas of responsibility are many, because you should be the only employee of your council, your chief of council, and you should be the only senior level for your staff to deal with. That separation of duties, that roles and responsibilities is the key area. And you as a band manager, you're the one that has to help with that understanding, awareness, and managing of it. So those are some of the key areas that I think would be very important. These things have served me well during my career, and really being persistent is a key strength that you need to have. Never taking no as an answer, always looking for a solution to do better. And when you have the opportunity to change systems and processes, embrace change. Another thing I've also learned that's really important for us is around conflict. Conflict is a good thing. Unresolved conflict is a bad thing. conflict to me indicates that we're doing stuff, we're growing, we're learning, we're developing. It should be an opportunity for change to make things better. You know, that's one thing I've always learned is when there's a crisis, there's an opportunity for change. And that's something that's really served me well a lot of times is when there's a crisis and you're ready and you're informed and you have some ideas to move forward, that's when things can happen a lot faster. You know, and last time I've looked, I think a lot of our communities are in crisis. So it's an opportunity for change. We need to have some vision. We need to be aware of that. We understand where our nation is going. We're usually the point of contact to help with change. And that's a big area of responsibility. One of the things I've kind of reflected on in my work is a community is always going to be as strong and as good as their administrator or their senior leadership. And so that's a key responsibility for us. And, you know, and I've talked about responsibilities a lot, and I'm learning a lot about my responsibilities as who I am as Ukamute, as a Stl'atl'imx, and my role now as a father, an uncle, brother, and you know, and sometime in the near future, probably be a grandfather. You know, it's amazing. I've also I'm a great uncle. You know, that's pretty neat because a lot of my nieces and nephews, it was neat to have that influence in their lives, to see them grow and develop, and some of them have actually been inspired by the work that I've done and things like that. You know, and I'm always thankful to have mentors that can give you that advice, give you that support, different way of looking at things. And I'm starting to find and notice that I've become a bit of a mentor myself. And so that's a big area of responsibility to do that, to help people understand, to realize who they are and where they're going, what their strengths are, and how to trust themselves. And those, I think, are critical pieces. You know, and I think that's kind of where I'm going to leave it off now. It probably is a good time to get into some of these questions.